Hey everybody, it's Joe, and you guys know the drill by now. Before we get into the episode, I have some real quick updates to keep you guys up to date with everything that's happening around here. New live episode. If you guys missed us on Facebook Live on St. Patrick's Day, you can catch up on that. We talk about 2018 films that Mike and I have seen that we aren't dedicating an entire episode to. We react to trailers, and we talk some movie news. The Handies. Those are out. They're our very own film awards ceremony that rival the Oscars, the Golden Globes, you name it. And it's available only on our YouTube or our website, howmanyfingerspodcast.com. And you can also find our live episode on our YouTube or website. So speaking of social media, in addition to our Facebook page where you can like us, you can now join our Facebook group, How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The Facebook group. That's what you would type into the Facebook search bar. People are just starting to post and discuss movies there. So join the conversation. And last but not least, merch. It's still one of the best ways that you can support us and keep this podcast going. You can find that at our Big Cartel, which is howmanyfingerspodcast.bigcartel.com. You can also find that link through our website. T-shirts are $9.99, koozies are $2.99, stickers are $1.49, and you can get all three in a package deal for $11.99. Seriously, point me to a podcast that has cheaper merch than that. I'll wait. And maybe I'll be surprised. Who knows? Crazier things have happened. But hey, I've gone on long enough here. I'm going to hand it over to my good friends, Hungover Mike and Joe, to introduce our review of Red Sparrow.
Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Joe.
And you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast. And this week, we're reviewing Red Sparrow. Yum! Hey guys, and welcome to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? Featuring two guys getting bombed in reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
Really? Bombed? How have we not had that yet?
It's one of those ones that I was like, all right, yeah, we're rounding out like the actual dictionary.
Is it...
Well, I guess bombed is not really a dictionary synonym.
No, yeah, that's, bombed is pretty, I don't know.
That might be. I feel like you might say that in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Although I feel like it would be insensitive in the 50s when people were actually getting bombed.
I'll tell you who else is getting bombed. But thank you, Rick Chang, for leaving that for us on Facebook.
Thank you. And this week we are drinking dirty martinis made with Tito's handmade vodka for our Red Sparrow episode, even though Tito's is from Texas.
Yeah, I was like, what are you trying
Russia.
What is going on here? What is this voice and this?
It's vodka, so you got to do a Russian accent,
yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Which, confession, we've actually done before on an establishing shot episode. Mm-hmm. After we've done so many episodes, it is actually started to get harder to do stuff, drinks that we haven't done before. But we had some vodka and some dirty martini stuff and olives, and I was like, the time is right to do it on an episode.
It looks good.
I love dirty martinis.
It's not, again, like I said, I've only really had one at a bar once or twice, maybe like a wedding or something. Mm-hmm. And then when you made that, because I was like, yeah, I think we've done this before, Mike, and it's pretty good. I always like it when you make it.
You've had dirty martinis before at weddings and bars and didn't like them? Or did you get a vodka martini and now you're tasting a dirty martini?
I've definitely, what does the olive make it dirty?
Yeah,
or
because okay, I think a vodka martini is just vodka and dry vermouth, I think.
Okay, I've had olives
maybe not even dry vermouth, but
in a martini before in a bar setting.
Well, it's olive juice. Like what we're doing is we have Tito's, and then I have dirty martini juice from ancient olive trees.
Okay.
Which
Well, that's what I was asking.
This doesn't even actually have the vermouth. It's just water, olive brine, and salt.
But could you?
I don't know if it's technically a dirty martini if you put the olives in
Right.
it. I think that's still just a vodka martini.
Okay, then maybe
It's the olive brine. It's the brine that you're putting in. I mean, you've had it on the podcast. But,
Oh, right. But then maybe like a
because I'm not a big fan
of
of just regular vodka martinis, but dirty martinis are like that's my wedding go-to. Mm-hmm. That's why weddings are so bad for me.
Cut to later that night
when Mike is vomiting into his shorts. There's also, you can get like a hot and dirty, which is a dirty martini, and then they put like a bit of like Tabasco sauce in it, so it gives it like a little kick. That's also really good when it's done nicely. And a lot of times when they do that, they'll put like a banana pepper or a hot pepper on like the, like we have like little sword things with olives in them that are soaking in alcohol. They'll do that with like a banana pepper or something on there too.
Tito's makes all the difference too. What a really great vodka.
There's very few like hard alcohols that I have like a brand for.
Right.
Besides, I guess with whiskey, if I'm trying to stay on a budget, I always go for is it Wild Buffalo? No, I can't even remember the name. Buffalo Trace.
Okay. Right.
I think they have a great tasting bourbon in that price category of like $20 to $30. Mm-hmm. That's usually on the cheaper side of that too. But Tito's, like, even if Tito's cost more, I would pay more for it. There's definitely a difference in the taste with Tito's, I think, compared to stuff in that price range and a little bit higher too.
Right. I think one of my first martinis and why I never really returned to them as a drink. I've just, after college, I feel like I went straight just into beer. I haven't really had hard liquor. Hard liquor just, again, it leads to bad nights for me, and I try to put myself on a more
shots of it.
I try to put myself in a more guided kind of. Well, again, maybe I've talked about this on the podcast where I'm a person who's all about volume. Mm-hmm. That's why anytime you see us doing some sort of craft beer, for example, Black Panther, Joe goes off the beaten path very quickly. Maybe not on Black Panther, but later we see myself in the Oscar review episode where I'm just like not there. I'm not present for that, really.
Somebody else was on that live episode.
Just a really slow-paced Joe. Mm-hmm. But I think the first martini I had made for me was like a gin martini, and I was like, I do not like the taste of this. And
gin cuts through
like
more.
Gin.
It cuts through more than vodka, though.
Right.
I'd made gin dirty martinis last week, and I was like, I definitely kind of like the vodka one more.
Yeah.
Because it tends to soak more into like the olive brine taste, which I mean, I could just straight up drink olive brine.
Oh yeah, same.
As disgusting as it is, but like olives are so good.
Oh, I love olives. Yeah. But yeah, this is good. Thank you.
It's gonna go quickly, and I'm gonna have to make more.
He's even got like you got your little olive sword in there and everything.
And then when you're done, you can eat those, and they'll be soaked in alcohol.
Ooh, I look forward to that.
It's a drink and a meal. But Joe, do you want to give me the IMDb description for Red Sparrow, and I'll jump into my mic notes.
I would love to. Ballerina Dominika Igorova, and now I don't even remember her last name being in the movie.
Didn't have me either.
Yeah, is recruited to Sparrow School, a Russian intelligence service where she is forced to use her body as a weapon. Her first mission, targeting a CIA agent, threatens to unravel the security of both nations.
I don't know that she really uses her body as a weapon in this movie. We'll get into that, but that's kind of...
That whole...
Yeah. It ended up being why I liked the movie, because based on the trailer... We'll get into that later. Let me get through my mic notes.
Definitely.
And then maybe we can start off there. But Red Sparrow is based on the 2013 novel by the same name by former CIA operative Jason Matthews. It was directed by...
What a CIA name.
Jason Matthews. You're on your own, Jason Matthews. We're cutting you loose.
Al Qaeda's in a cave somewhere. Number one target, Jason Matthews. Oh, foiled again by Jason Matthews.
It kind of sounds like, what was that one like off-brand G.I. Joe doll, like Max Steel?
Oh yeah,
Remember
yeah.
that where it was like
yeah.
the more like corny like GI Joe.
Was that what Max Steel was?
I mean, it was
can't
the
remember,
same type
yeah.
of. They sold them
Yeah.
as like the dolls. I think there was like a TV show or something. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was as popular as the dolls were.
Right.
Because they were like GI Joes, but it was more cartoony. He could be
Right.
like Space Max Steel rather than like GI Joes. In the later years, started to get into like. At the time that Max Steel was being sold, GI Joe was like realistic army, like toys
Right.
and
Yeah.
stuff. But Red Sparrow was directed by Francis Lawrence, no relation to Jennifer.
Oh, Jennifer's dad.
Oh, okay. My notes are completely wrong. But he has previously directed Constantine, I Am Legend, Water for Elephants, and the final 3 Hunger Games movies, as well as various TV episodes and the most music videos that I've ever seen on someone's filmography before. It's
lot of these-
ridiculous.
A lot
Literally,
of-
like he
yeah.
was doing 15 to 16 music videos a year from like the 90s through the early 2000s.
That's
Until basically like he directed Constantine and
I feel like I wasn't aware of how common this was until we started doing this podcast. I feel like anybody who, I mean, he did Constantine. So anybody who lived through that kind of era had to come up through music videos. I feel like studios were like, we'll let you direct Constantine, but why don't you, direct
well,
these...
it was like that was how he came up was like that was clearly his living for years.
Oh, definitely.
And
Right.
he must have been good at it because he has some really like not that I necessarily remember these music videos themselves, but he did them for huge songs.
But
Aerosmith's
yeah.
I Don't Want to Miss a Thing, POD's Alive, which did actually win Best Music Video Direction. Backstreet Boys' The Call, Shakira's Whenever, Wherever, which I do remember because that was like the big Shakira song. Skater Boy, Jenny from the Block, Cry Me a River, Lady Gaga's Bad Romance, and then as recently as Beyonce's Run the World.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, like a ridiculous amount of music videos. So even though his film direction filmography is a tiny bit thin, I mean, he's got some big blockbusters in there, but it's short in length. He's been doing music videos since like 1993, essentially.
Right.
And doing like 15 to 16 a year. So he made his money doing music videos.
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting. Usually you see like a few music videos on like someone's thing like interspersed in there, but his like it's you have to scroll forever to get to actual like movies.
I feel like even David Fincher's IMDb is kind of like that. Like he had to do a bunch of music videos before he could get into movies.
I don't know if he was doing 15 to 16
Oh no, definitely.
a year.
Yeah, that sounds a lot. Yeah.
We filmed one music video this year.
Yeah, really.
We also, I mean, he got paid a lot more for it, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, Red Sparrow was written by Justin Haith, who has previously written The Clearing, Revolutionary Road, Snitch, The Lone Ranger, A Cure for Wellness, and the upcoming Queen biopic Bohemian Rhapsody, which is a very diverse swath of films there.
Yeah.
You've got like a horror movie in The Clearing. Revolutionary Road is like that drama with Leo DiCaprio.
It's like an Oscar drama right now.
I don't know what Snitch is, but then The Lone Ranger, A Cure for Wellness, and then this. It's kind of all over the board.
Yeah.
That's the end of my notes. I don't have any more.
So, yeah, let's talk about how this movie was marketed, because it's not the same as how this movie plays out. Yeah. So we get like a very kind of I don't even know how to describe this trailer. I mean, I saw somebody on Twitter say like it was after they watched the movie, for shame, learn how to separate the trailer from the movie. They're like, like with different casting, this movie could have been like a prequel to like the Black Widow movies or something.
I heard so many comparisons to
Yeah,
that.
and it's like, not really. I mean, once you get into the movie, not really. But definitely
It's a lot of like
that's
actual
what the
like
trailer looks
diplomatic spying rather than like action spy movie.
Yeah, there's no real action scenes.
Because I remember seeing the trailer during Atomic Blonde, like before Atomic Blonde.
What? That far off?
It's been a while that they've had trailers for this. If it wasn't directly like at seeing Atomic Blonde, it was at the time that Atomic Blonde was out. It might have even been before that, because I feel like I remember seeing both the trailers and being like, now they're just doing female spy movies. Like that must be the new trend that we have to watch out for.
It's really hard not to compare these two movies too, by the way.
I mean, I think once you actually... I was comparing the trailers. I think when you watch the actual movies, they are markedly different.
Definitely. But yeah, no, it's marketed as kind of this kind of Jennifer Lawrence goes into horror school. It's probably what I'm going to be referring to it as. Like this entire movie goes into this kind of Russian government organization horror school to learn how to use her body as a weapon. And it looks like her main target is like Joel Edgerton, or it looks like she even has some like side quest of, seducing this other man.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like I don't know, it does. It kind of looks like borderline, like superhero-ish. Just, she looks like, I don't know, some sort of, it looks superhero origin story-esque in the trailer.
I don't know if I got that vibe.
It looks something. I don't know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What did you get from the?
Well, it seemed like it was going to be very heavy on like the sex, like using sex to get like everything. And I think when you get into like the actual meat of the movie, yes, sex is a part of it because she does go to the horse school, which I think is the worst part of the movie. But I think the movie has more to do with a rejection of those ideals.
Yeah.
And like I think the trailer, you can't really blame it. I mean, that's how they're going to market the trailer. Sex sells, and they're going to market it as like Jennifer Lawrence has sex with people as a spy. But the movie is actually more about like, that's really fucked up to make people do that as a spy, and like kind of a rejection of those ideals. And, there's a different way to get around that.
It is. I mean, to get into the movie now, it is kind of a cool premise. The whole, like, what the trailer presented.
The idea,
like
the idea
really
of
cool
the spy
premise.
school thing is really cool. I think, or the sex horse school,
right,
is cool. I think they execute it very poorly in this movie.
Yeah, most definitely. It's something that we've never seen before, and I mean, again, that's what I'm concerned about, and maybe what I continue to be concerned about, especially after seeing it, is like. You see so many spy movies. There's only so many ways you can do a spy movie. Is this a collection of just tropes from other spy movies that we've seen? And, because that's what every spy movie seems like. No matter how good, no matter how bad, it's just kind of like, oh, it's a spy movie, The opening scene wasn't for me. But it was maybe the most impressive part of the film, in a way.
Is the opening the whole musical model?
Yes. So
I didn't like it when it was happening. I remember feeling kind of bored when it was happening.
It just wasn't for me, but I can appreciate it. A lot of people liked it. I think I was just kind of like, okay.
I remember at the time feeling like, all right, we're taking a very long time to like we're showing these characters, but are we really getting to know them at all? And it's just kind of a lot of stuff happening that doesn't really mean anything for the plot. Yeah. Later on, I think it ends up making more sense for the plot of it, and I appreciate that scene in retrospect.
I wish this movie was stylized a little more. I wish there's something this movie is missing that makes me totally want to like Atomic Blonde was very stylized, and I really enjoyed that. I wish this almost had more of this just dripping in red kind of like color palette. Like I already started making the artwork for this episode.
There was a decent amount of it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a darker red. Like they throw that in. Like I remember thinking that I feel like the location scouting. I don't know if that's a word because it's mostly indoors. But the location selected for this movie are pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like especially the spy school, like that like school in like the middle of like the snowy like tundra. But inside of it, like they've got like, this huge like red curtains that are down. So like even when it's in like drab settings, they find ways to like insert like a little bit of red here and there. Red is definitely red Sparrow, but. Red is definitely the palette here.
So I'm going to throw out my first complaint with this movie. And I really have a mixed bag of positive reactions and negative reactions to this movie. Jennifer Lawrence, for the record, I feel like I'm pretty biased against Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah.
I don't like this, again, as I will often refer to it as like this personality or role that her and her publicist have picked out for her to act like a fucking goofball on like the red carpet of the Oscars. Whatever, separate that from her career. And she loves going on like Ellen and talking about how she loves to get drunk and like do weird things like when she's on vacation. I'm just kind of also like, dude, you're like my age now. You gotta like kind of mature
Says the guy
a little.
hosting a drunk
No,
podcast.
exactly. I don't know. She's playing into something, and it's not my audience.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if we can just kind of sit on that for a moment, I feel like there is this whole like that was her kind of like whether it was a shtick or not, or whether that was actually just Jennifer Lawrence being Jennifer Lawrence, and it happened to click for a while.
Right.
It worked for a while. Like she was like the biggest thing anywhere for a while.
Oh,
Just
definitely.
like,
Yeah.
Jennifer Lawrence. I mean, part of it had to do with her being in the Hunger Games. Like that's obviously a bigger audience.
Oh, yeah.
Than kind of like the not necessarily indie, but she hasn't been picking like the big blockbuster movies since then. She hasn't really gone full indie again like she started out, or she was doing like she would do like Hunger Games, and then she would do, not that it's indie, but like David O. Russell movies in between, you know, like Silver Linings Playbook and American Hustle. It worked for a long time, and then I feel like something just clicked, and everyone was like, you know, we're really sick of that. Like, just stop it.
Well,
And part of it was like there was that really big thing with the like the Hawaiian ruins or statues or something like that. There's something where she was like making light of the fact that she was like rubbing her ass against like ancient like Hawaiian like things, and like I feel like the situation
Again,
got really blown out of proportion.
Well, that was my. I'm not trying to say Jennifer Lawrence, you shouldn't get drunk, but that was a part of what I was saying before. Is that her like, where you do that and then you go on like the Ellen show and like brag about how you're like rubbing your asshole on like a fucking
there was a little bit. There was a lack of. It was not good optics.
No,
there, but I feel like I don't know if it started there. Or if it had, it also, I feel like it also has something to do with her being linked to Amy Schumer as friends.
Yes.
Where like Amy Schumer Amy Schumer had a similar thing where like we were like, Amy Schumer, like body positive, like, you know,
yes.
Non-traditional like female comedian, like this is awesome. And then it just started like a nosedive where like she said one or two wrong things and everyone's now like, fuck Amy Schumer, fuck Trainwreck, fuck Snatched. Like we're going to negatively review her comedy special on like Netflix. Like,
that was a really bad comedy special, though.
Oh, I didn't see it.
It was,
but I do think there was a part of it that was people that were. She fell out of the public grace, so to speak, and I feel like part of it has to have rubbed off on Jennifer Lawrence a little bit because they were very publicly like friends, and I feel like their downfall started to occur at like the same time, where for some reason something happened in like the zeitgeist and the ethos that was just kind of like, yeah, no, we don't really want this like. I'm one of you type shit. Like we want people to be celebrities who are celebrities, and we got rid of those too.
I mean, I feel like we still joke about how Jennifer Lawrence was so obvious with like, I like pizza, pizza. Like that was like her like insert line for like maybe 2 or 3 years while she was doing like the Hunger Games. Like, how do I speak to the public? And she would just be like, during an interview, she'd just be like, where's the pizza? Like, and it was just.
I mean, I forgive it a little bit because when you're doing like exhausting like press tours, like you do have to come with whether it's crafted or just something that you come up with to survive those interviews.
Right. Yeah.
You have to have a little bit of a shtick that's just kind of like, what do I say to get through these interviews that I'm doing in Germany, and Japan, and Russia, and America, in multiple places across America during the Hunger Games 1 through 5 like press tours that she had to do.
But the point I wanted to make is it's part of me does sympathize with Jennifer Lawrence. I've kind of felt bad when Mother didn't. I mean, a lot of people loved Mother. I mean, I listened to so many podcasts where people praise Mother, put Mother on like their top 10 list.
Oh, we haven't talked about the fact that they broke up after Mother. Because they were together when we were. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
When we were reviewing Mother.
Yeah.
Her and Darren Aronofsky. And since they broke up, and I think she cited like the filming of Mother and their opinions on it as being part of it.
Right. But
maybe the fact that like she had to go to the hospital and he was like, let's film.
Yeah.
Let's keep rolling.
but I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I can empathize with her or whatever. I felt bad that Mother wasn't great, and a lot of people did love it, and good. Bottom line, Jennifer Lawrence can be very charismatic. We've seen it in not only the Hunger Games role, but we saw it in the Silver Linings Playbook. I mean, even though I gave Hunger Games...
To clarify for the listeners and me a little bit as well.
Okay.
Do you not like Jennifer Lawrence as an actress, or is it just her off-camera shtick that she... Well, on camera, but off-film shtick that she does?
Yeah. I would like to separate...
Because I feel like you also don't like David O. Russell, so the times that she has been what I thought were really good, you've been like, well... I don't like these movies, so I'm not really looking for good performances there as well.
Silver Linings Playbook was a movie that soured greatly in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Sabri had it on Netflix one day, like years later, and I was just kind of like, oh my God, this movie's not good. And I think I was just so in like a college mentality of kind of like, yeah, mental illness, yo. And then it was just kind of like, it kind of bastardizes mental illness, and it's a little bit racist with Indians. And the third act
I don't ever remember the Indian part. I haven't seen it since theaters.
Yeah, it's a little eye-opening when you watch it again. And then the third act is...
That was what, 2009?
Like Step It Up too. We were in college, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So it had to be during that. What I want to say is, yes, again, I don't blame Jennifer Lawrence for being bad in Mother. She really just had like one expression during that or one or two expressions or whatever during that whole movie. But that was the direction of Darren Aronofsky.
Mm-hmm.
Again, one of my favorite directors from years past. Jennifer Lawrence can be charismatic. She can have really great performances. In Winter's Bone, I haven't really seen any of the Hunger Games films, but I've seen clips, and, she can carry those movies. She can carry these huge, gigantic, post-apocalyptic, whatever the fuck those movies, that whole teen genre movies were.
PUBG the movie.
And again, she's very charismatic in Silver Linings Playbook for, again, watch that movie again and kind of go into it. Like, I don't think it would do well nowadays. I think it just came out at the right time in the right place. However, what I wanted to lead into this entire time is I think her Russian accent is fucking garbage in this movie. And I think she's also, for some reason, because she's Russian, she's like also just monotone. And we do just get like one, like, it's just one.
I saw a lot of critics praising her performance in this.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I disagree. I don't think she's bad. I think she has moments of like, oh yeah, that's the Oscar-winning Jennifer Lawrence there.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree that like the moment she started talking, I was like, I also like from the trailer, I don't think they completely made it clear that. Or maybe I just haven't seen the trailer in a long time before I actually went out and saw the movie. Because again, I thought the trailer came out a long time ago.
They have a lot
I was like, all right, I know it's Red Sparrow is
Joel Edgerton like voiceovers, like
in the trailer.
Yeah, where you don't hear a lot of her.
I didn't realize that she was Russian in this. I thought it was like, oh, that's your phone. I thought that it was like she was American, and she was like pretending to be Russian in the movie, maybe, or something like that. I knew it was about like this new Cold War that we have going on, but I didn't realize that she was a Russian citizen playing like a Russian native speaking English with a Russian accent, which like I hate that in movies. I don't know. I feel like I don't know. Maybe studios have more data about how audiences feel about subtitles, but I would much rather watch people speak the native tongue of the characters that they're playing with subtitles than watch us pretend that everyone around the world speaks English.
Yeah, it's that, and that's the thing. This film kind of wants the best of both worlds. I think it wants to kind of be this kind of jarring, kind of indie movie, kind of, and then, but then it also kind of has this pretty big budget. it has it has this director and Jennifer Lawrence fresh off the Hunger Games kind of, and it's a foreign film that's in English. Like, like it's I don't know. It's that has always bothered me. It's kind of like that, like Valkyrie with like Tom Cruise. Like, I just didn't even want to see that movie because it was just him being like, okay, guys, we have to kill Hitler. I'm actually a German native. It was just kind of like, what?
He wasn't even talking in a German accent?
He kind of was. But it was just kind of like, it looked like a cool action movie, but I was just kind of like, what? I don't know.
It's weird because it's not the same, because the characters aren't actually speaking English. We're supposed to believe that they're speaking Russian to each other, I believe. Otherwise, why would she speak to her mother in English?
Well, her boss, there's one Russian line in this movie, and it's when her boss is talking about Mary Louise Parker's character, where he's like, I don't want to like deal with like this drunk C word
when they want us to know that they're speaking in a language that she can't understand. Mary Louise Parker.
Right, but then that takes it out for me. That like...
Yeah, no, I'm not defending that at all. It's one of my least favorite parts of the movie is I don't know why... Like, yeah, I understand it's harder and maybe you have to pay Jennifer Lawrence a little bit more to learn Russian for this movie. But do it. Hire Russian actors. There's great Russian actors out there. Yeah. Like, if you want to tell a movie about Russian natives who are spies, like... If she's going to talk to her mother, it's got to be in Russian. Like, I understand, like, maybe she's going to speak with a Russian accent with broken English to Joel Edgerton, who's an American, who she knows is not Russian.
Joel Edgerton could speak Russian to her because he's been undercover.
It would make all of their performances much more believable because it hurts her performance that she's speaking in Russian in sort of like broken English. Like, not that it's really broke, but like it's the accent makes it... That's just the impression it gives when you hear someone talking in like a Russian accent. Is it sounds like it's like broken English. And like she wouldn't be talking in broken English. She would be talking in Russian to everyone. It
makes everybody sound
confusing.
Like they're doing an SNL Vladimir Putin impression.
Yeah, and
which is
exposes
a weird
like
context for the entire film.
It's just, and she doesn't have like a great Russian accent. Like, it's not horrible. Like, she nails is not the right word, but she hits all the right marks for, like, we understand that it's a Russian accent. It doesn't slip into any other accent at some point, but it still just sounds like, oh, that's Jennifer Lawrence's Russian accent rather than like speak Russian. Like, like they couldn't even like throw in like a few, like, besides the one line that he says, like, like Russian phrases maybe that she uses. Like, even that would like go a little bit of the way to be like, okay, they're talking in Russian. And I don't know. It was a weird choice. I know why they're doing it because it's an American movie, but I feel like, again, maybe they have data that we don't. But I know for me as a viewer, I see that and I'm immediately turned off.
It's an elephant in the room. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, don't make that movie then. Make a movie about an American spy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I can't really... Is there a movie that's really hurt when they've done that? Like, that's had the subtitles? So. I mean, I don't know if there's a lot of examples of... Not that this was a blockbuster movie, but it's in between. It's above. Like above and...
It was in, like, every theater.
It opened second, I think, to Black Panther.
I mean, how many...
But I think that was also for lack of anything else being out.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. So... Again, this opening scene, shot glass. Go for it. So this opening scene, again, it wasn't my speed. I didn't really like it. I kind of wish a lot of this movie was a little more stylized, but I was kind of impressed with the technical side of the dancing. It looked better than a lot of I, Tonya.
She did study ballet for 4 years. I don't know.
Okay.
I couldn't find whether she actually did all that dancing or if they had to do some stitching.
Who knows? It felt seamless. So I was very impressed with that.
Like in I, Tonya, it was a lot of like she's skating for the entirety of this song, whereas in this, like, they were cutting between Joel Edgerton.
Right.
So
they had the luxury.
If they ever had to cut out of that, they could solve that real quick.
The camera was behind her back a lot too, so it could just be another blonde girl with like a bun. But anyway, Yeah, I don't know. And then the male ballerina like breaks her fucking leg at the end of this montage, and Joel Edgerton, who is the spy who thinks with his heart, kind of, who is too attached to, he's undercover in Russia, and he obviously has this guy who is Russian that he's working with, and he wants to protect him, and he shoots his gun when Russian authorities kind of interrupt some sort of like handoff that he's having in a public park.
Gorky Park.
But I couldn't really be like, I don't know. I wasn't like crazy about like a lot of the very like violent imagery. Like when he stomped on like the back of her leg and broke her leg, the Jennifer Lawrence, I was kind of like, like, I don't know. I feel like I've kind of already been through this in like Black Swan and all this other stuff. I wasn't feeling it. I don't know if that's a complaint of the movie or if that's just my kind of, okay, like this isn't doing anything that new with like body horror kind of.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of tame in terms of, It didn't even tame to the point of it didn't look like I've seen sports injuries that looked like real life sports injuries that looked worse with broken legs than that. Like, I don't know, maybe it's just the way that he steps on it where you're not expecting it to be that broken, and then it cuts to the shot and it's like at like a weird angle. I did hear people in my theater like gasp when that shot came up, so it must have been working for them, but I was just kind of like, I know what you're trying to get across. I don't really blame you for not being able to pull it. It's such a minute shot in the grand scope of the movie.
All right. So while you're doing that, I'll talk about more of the broader problem I have with this movie. I feel like this movie wants to portray Jennifer Lawrence in this strong sort of female heroine who is rebelling against a system that wants to use like, or who wants to like subject her body to its rules. Like a lot in like these kind of, she's sent to like whore school because she can't be a ballerina anymore. And it kind of wants to have this feminist edge. I don't know if you got that from this, but I don't know. The Russian government wants to use her body and sex as a tool for them to get what they want through espionage. During this scene, and I understand where overcoming that seems like a feminist message, but the film undercuts that at every turn by the way of like, I think maybe the director, Francis Lawrence, like the way he shoots Jennifer Lawrence in this movie. Did you notice any, like, there's a lot of like upskirt shots and these kind of like leering shots of her breast where like it spends a little too much time like looking at her nudity, and there are scenes where she's being physically and sexually abused in this movie, and the camera just instinctually will kind of zoom up to her like a gaped mouth, like her gaped mouth, like kind of like like it's reminiscent in porn in such a strange and uncomfortable way, and it doesn't.
I think I had read so many negative reviews of this movie that were pointing to the whore school thing. Like the way the reviews made it seem, it was like that was the only portion of this movie, was that the whole movie was whore school. And I think the way they described a lot of the stuff, when I actually saw it, I was like, oh, that's not really how you described it, and you kind of blew everything out of proportion. That maybe coming from that, like, not higher, but I guess lower expectation of like, oh, this is gonna be like a garbage movie that's like exploiting like Jennifer Lawrence. That I wasn't seeing it as much, and also reading a lot of, because I had read the big like marketing push for this in terms of the press tours that they did was Jennifer Lawrence talking about like doing intentional nudity for the first time. Because I mean, she had like poking nipple scenes in Mother that she also talked about in the press tour for that.
Oh, she was definitely fully nude in Mother.
I think they might have used a body double or something.
Oh, really?
Because she didn't talk about it on the press tour, and they made a big deal about like this is the first time she's been nude on camera. Because there is the scene in Mother where like they like rip like her shirt open.
Right.
And that they must have used a body double or some kind of
okay.
stitching or something, because they made it. That was the whole point of this press tour, was like, unless they were just pretending that Mother didn't exist for the sake of this press tour, maybe it's different studios, but they were making a whole big deal about like she was a part of the whole like fappening nudes leak with the iCloud hacks. It was her.
Mm-hmm.
She viewed this movie as kind of like taking
reclaiming
a little bit of
her,
that back. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, you saw something that I didn't intend for you to see. Now I'm gonna, you know, put it out there intentionally and kind of ruin that for you in that way. And there was a lot said about like she, in her own way, her like pizza type way, she was like, I was so nervous to do it at first, and then by the end of it, everyone was just kind of like, all right, like you need to like put your clothes back on when you're going to lunch and stuff. Like,
right.
There was just a lot talked about her like nudity and the sex scenes in Horror School in the press around this movie. That I was surprised how little it actually had to do with the rest of the movie. How it was like my least favorite part of the movie. And I didn't think it was actually nearly as bad as people were making it out to be in these like horrible, scathing, negative reviews. From like that were looking at it from like a feminist perspective, where I did sort of get a feminist message from this movie, and I'm kind of confused where they thought that it went so wrong. Oh, I mean, the point I was trying to tie up before was just that in terms of the director Francis Lawrence, there was a lot talked about between Jennifer Lawrence in her press tours about how like great he was with handling those scenes. Like she said that a big part of it was like how comfortable he made her feel, and that like, you know, she would be there like naked for the shooting of the scene, and he would only look her right in the eyes, and she was like, "Oh, it's just like we're filming like any other scene." Like,
It's creepy, man.
What?
It's
Creepy that he's looking her in the eyes? Or?
No. It's just.
She said that he was very professional about it, and it made her feel good.
I'm glad.
He purportedly like sent her the film when it was done, and was like, anything that you want deleted, you know, nudity or sex wise, you just let me know, and it'll be out there. I mean, they must have a good relationship after working through Hunger Games for 3 films.
I don't know.
Which part is creepy?
The creepy part to me is that I don't know. It's like all I could think about sometimes was just was kind of like
there's an unspoken thing that I thought was creepy. That's like, oh, I worked with you on 3 Hunger Games films, and now I have this script that involves nudity and sex, and I'm like, Jennifer Lawrence.
Exactly. No, that's literally what I was about to say.
When sex really has nothing to do with the other Hunger Games movies,
right?
But he immediately thinks of Jennifer Lawrence. I don't know.
It's kind of like, now that I have control, you know. But it's again, and I don't know where this kind of male gaze cinematography comes from. It could just come from the cinematographer being like, you know, in this society, this is the only way I've seen women's bodies being shot, kind of like.
I don't know if I noticed it in the cinematography, but I felt like I noticed it in the costuming, where it was just kind of like she was unnecessarily braless for a lot of the movie. That's another thing, is that watching this, I felt like they were trying to kind of give this female perspective during the course of this movie, and there's so many like just small things that are just like, I saw some interview with him where he's kind of like, oh, you know, like they actually use like floppy disks because they're like harder to trace or whatever, and they want to make it like keep as little information as possible. He had all this like technical information about floppy disk, but like he didn't like, I just felt like no woman really like looked at this script or like looked at any sort of like cut of this movie, because like you can't dye hair that long, not even dye, but bleach that hair like that long with like a single box. That's not actually how you dye hair. And you don't go fucking swimming the next day after you bleach your hair. Chlorine pool.
Yeah, it's just like, it just.
Well, I mean, the original book was written by a dude as well, who's also not a Russian. He's an American CIA operative.
But it also, that scene where they are roommates under this kind of like Russian operation or whatever, but it just seemed like totally out of both of their characters for like all of a sudden it just turned into like a guy's like two girls alone in a sleepover kind of fantasy. Or it's like, here, you're not gonna like dye your hair right, let me go. Like, and it was just kind of like, I didn't need this scene. She could have gone to a salon with all the fucking money that the Russian government has. Like, it was just so...
Well, I would imagine you don't want to be seen in a public salon dyeing your hair as an operative. I didn't mind that scene because I thought it was, rather than like a girl slumber party, it was like, oh, I'm the more experienced graduate of the Sparrow school. So A, I know what you've been through as a Sparrow, and B, I know what you're going through as a spy or trying to learn. And she's kind of imparting a little knowledge there. And like, yeah, like if you've gone through the Sparrow school, your looks are all about it. So she is someone who has dyed her own hair many times before and knows how to do it properly, even though, as you've pointed out, it's probably not proper in reality. But
right,
I'm willing to forgive one box of hair dye over two.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it would take multiple sessions, and I don't know. Maybe we don't know the timeline, but I feel like, and again, this is piggybanking off. I mean, growing up in a house with women with blonde hair and being around girls or whatever, and it's something that I noticed. But the swimming pool thing, especially, I was like, "What are you doing? Your hair's gonna turn green!" Like, you know, like kind of, and like also like the thickness and length of that hair. I don't know. But again, it's kind of like, yes, these are small details, but I think it makes a really strong case for kind of there was no real female involvement with anything besides the females in front of the camera. There were no females behind the camera for this movie, definitely. And I don't know. I think maybe just that could have helped this movie, especially because a lot of it's about the female experience. And again, it's kind of weird because it's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. What do white male directors do? Do they tell the same old white male story, or do they kind of try to venture into telling a person of color or female experience movie? And obviously, it's kind of like, what do I know about a person of color's experience? How would I make a movie about that kind of? So it is this weird time in Hollywood. So I don't know. I feel like I have to kind of be forgiving of him for that because he hasn't lived his life as a female. How would he know? I mean, have female staff for some sort of script writing thing, or a script supervisor kind of female. I don't know.
I think I was just viewing the movie because I read so much negative press that was like, she gets raped in front of the class in like a horror school, and like, you know, there's just like all this like inappropriate stuff. But when you watch the actual movie in context, it's very clear that that's inappropriate. The whole point of the movie is that like
they'll do anything.
It's fucked up that like she is forced to have sex, or at least try to have sex in front of the classroom with this dude, and it's fucked up that like it's viewed as a failure on her part to turn down this guy who, you know, and hurt this guy who's trying to rape her in the showers at Sparrow School. And it kind of ends up driving the rest of the movie is like, that's even like, I don't know if we're 46 minutes in. Maybe we can
let's
spoilers
get
now.
Into spoilers, yeah.
But like when she meets with, I think it's when she meets with Jeremy Irons. At some point, no. It's when she meets with Joel Edgerton, where he's like, you know, we wouldn't ask our operatives to do that in like America. Like if you became like a double agent, like nothing's worth that essentially. And I think that viewpoint is like, there's a few other like kind of, I thought, nice moments. Like I think when, it sounds weird to say that in context of what I'm about to say, but like in the scene where she does get raped, and then when she is being interrogated after that, her brother is just kind of like, or not her brother, her cousin or her uncle is like, I would never let anyone hurt you. And she says like kind of defiantly, like, he was inside me. And he kind of like brushes that off. But I thought that was a really nice line in the script on her part to be like, yeah, like he didn't physically like beat her, but rape is an act of violence. And like I thought that was a nice way to kind of insert that there. Like,
or he didn't finish, kind of, you know, like he started and then we cut
it. But he was inside me, and like that's what she's kind of getting across, and he just immediately brushes away. Like I thought there was a few like nice moments, you know, through that. Not that, like, I mean, I don't think the whole movie is like a champion of women's rights, nor does it have to be. It's a spy movie, but I don't think it's anti-feminist, really, or...
There was definitely a...
But again, I'm saying, I was coming from this, like, people viewing it as, like, the worst movie ever that was, like, you know, bringing women's rights back, like, a few pegs, and I was just kind of like, no, like, I don't think that was their intention. I think their intention was actually a little bit of the opposite, and I thought they handled it decently.
I think it's a lot of weird PR, and...
Well, the PR was so sex-focused and so nudity-focused.
Weird PR, weird studio, where it's kind of like, all right, we have Jennifer Lawrence. She was a part of this fappening nudes leak. Kind of, how do we spin this into Red Sparrow is her... I don't know.
Victory, yeah.
And I mean, again, even her saying something along the lines of that. I don't know. It's a strange predicament. I just, again, we've spent so much time on Horse School, but it is one of the most problematic things. I just want to finish off one of my last thoughts. The Horse School scenes didn't hold together thematically for me.
They're problematic for numerous reasons.
She's standing up to power, and like, I'm just doing things my way, but like, not like, she tells like her head mistress, like, I did everything you asked of me, but after like watching her not do, like, this is after scenes of like watching her
She's
not
been defiant the whole time.
Yes, exactly. Like, really disobeyed her at every like stage of this Horse School scene or set of scenes. I just, by the end of that sequence, I like really didn't understand what the movie really even wanted me to think. At that point, she doesn't listen to anybody, but she like does what she wants to do. And I was just also kind of like, why do they even keep giving her assignments? Like, even later in the movie, kind of.
Well, I mean, it makes sense later because we come to find out that the headmistress doesn't think that she is fit for it. Right. But the person who sees her potential is Jeremy Irons, who, again, we're in spoiler territory now.
Right.
Jeremy Irons ends up being the mole from later in the movie. So
what? The guy who has 3 lines and is a really big actor, he's the mole? There's not that many actors in this movie. He's the mole? I thought that wasn't a huge surprise in the movie.
Oh, I was kind of taken back by it because I thought that a few of the people in the Russian government, like the one guy, I don't know what his title is, but like the head guy of like the Russian or whatever, he's a decent actor who is in a lot of roles similar to that. He's a little typecast, but I was just kind of like, oh, okay. And like, it's not like Jeremy Irons is doing a whole lot recently. So I was just kind of like, okay, like they got a few guys to be in this movie. I mean, I assumed he would have a bigger part later on down the line, but I didn't realize that he was going to be the mole. I thought that was a good twist.
I think it got a little ruined for me because I was like, oh, what's Jeremy Irons' role going to be in all of this? And they started talking about a mole, and I was like, there's really only like 3 people it could be, really, like, that I've been introduced to, that I have like when he becomes the mole, I'd be like, oh, it's him, kind of. And I kind of just assumed it would.
Yeah, for some reason, I wasn't even really trying to think ahead of the movie while watching it. I was pretty engaged with this. Right. Which is why, I mean, I think when we get to our ratings, I have an overall positive reception to this movie. I had a good time watching it. I don't think it's a masterpiece by any means, but I didn't come out of this movie being like, fuck, like Red Sparrow, fuck Francis Lawrence. Like, it was a pretty good time. I was entertained for most of it. I was very invested in where the story was going to go for these characters, and I was very pleased with the way that the twist ended up turning out, or the multiple twists that ended up sort of happening.
She's a fucking quadruple agent. Well, they think that I think that I think. I mean, that's
what all spy movies are. That's the twist for all spy movies.
I think this took it like in Zero Dark 30, I think there's like a triple agent where like I feel like they just had to like one up it in like
now. Even in like Atomic Blonde, we'd like lost count of like.
Oh right, yeah. That's
I feel
true.
Like in this, at least we followed her so closely, even if there is not the greatest like character development in this movie. We at least were so close to her in this movie that we like it wasn't really a surprise. In terms of like, we weren't like, oh, she would do that. Like everything
Right.
made sense for her character that she did, even if it was a twist in terms of we didn't know she was planning this or.
Let me.
But they did also show us a bunch of the stuff that happened.
This is a weird kind of part of the movie, and it was kind of a little bit shocking. Or maybe they did it for shock factor. It was shocking for me, but when her uncle leaves her this, like in the very beginning of the movie after she breaks her ankle, and her uncle kind of like leaves her like this manila kind of envelope that proves that her kind of partner in the ballet purposely broke her leg because he's in love with this other girl. But when Jennifer Lawrence gets like revenge on them and like stalks them into the shower.
That's very early in the movie. And that was when I was still like, it was a while before I was like, oh, I care about this movie.
And
like
beats.
that's what I was kind of giving up on the movie at this point. Because I thought that they presented it like she killed the two of them.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck? Like we're supposed to root for this person who just went to kill someone who fucked her over in her career? Like,
yeah,
it wasn't until he was like, oh, you broke her jaw, that I was like, oh, okay.
But still, she beat them unconscious, and it's a very violent scene, almost more violent than a lot of what's done to her. Again, she endures a lot of sexual abuse, and that
having
that
sex
doesn't
while
compare.
she killed them was kind of dumb too.
Yeah,
because they do they're being so secretive about it. Mm-hmm. I just feel like you wouldn't have to be that secretive in the ballet.
But
like,
again,
I've been in plays. They're
yeah.
A lot of stuff happens backstage.
Right. But again, like you said, it definitely, I mean, they introduced this whole mother thing. The Darren Aronofsky film with an exclamation
mother
point.
exclamation point.
No, but her mother.
It's about the Bible.
in Mother Earth, and it's just all a big metaphor. But no, her mother, the mother role in Red Sparrow that plays Jennifer Lawrence's mom, I feel like they do so much work with that to have some sort of sympathy and have the weight of the world on Jennifer Lawrence's shoulders or whatever. And then they have her just like go off and do something like that. And I was like, kind of like, it really rocks the sympathy meter. Where I was just kind of like,
yeah, it's a very selfish thing to do.
I don't know if I'm cheering for this person. Maybe I like honestly thought she was just going to go confront them and be like, oh, I see my fucking ankle is broke. Like, you guys are lucky I don't go to the fucking police about this. You guys are lucky I don't go to like my
It's out of character
Russian
because
government.
she's so smart and calculating later in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, and
well, again,
and we don't really have something that's like, oh, this is where she turned a corner from being this like reactive person to someone that's proactive and, you know, thinking steps ahead of people in the game. Like, it would have been much smarter for the movie and the script to have her do something that was like, you know, revenge driven, but very smart. And then her uncle, you know, with his knowledge sees that and it's like, oh, you could be a Red Sparrow. Like, you don't get into the Red Sparrow program because you're good with a cane.
Because you beat the shit out of somebody who wronged you. Hi, CIA here. We saw that you beat the shit out of that guy who stole your...
That's pretty much all we do.
We saw you caught up to that guy who stole your bike.
Are you available for an interview on Thursday?
Stole your bike in 4th grade, and you give it... And
he's in a coma now.
We'd like to have a president with you and Barack Obama right now. This is 2011, America.
Barack is still president.
Barack is still president.
That's the last time he was president, was 2011.
Yes, 2011 is when he left off.
That's how long it feels like.
I don't know. There's also like, again, you can kind of compare this to Atomic Blonde, where I thought
Atomic Blonde is so much more action driven.
But
I feel like a better comparison.
But some of the nudity in Atomic Blonde, I think, frames nudity a lot better. Like, it's kind of like, oh, like Charlize Theron is supposed to be titillating kind of for the audience, or maybe it's something where it's like, she's naked, but this is simply for the display of
her bruises,
the fucking abuse that she has endured during the
Although Atomic Blonde did have this sort of like unnecessary lesbian scene.
Right? Yeah, of course.
but it was coming from a graphic novel, so I forgave it a little bit.
Right.
And I put more of the blame on the graphic novel comic book industry.
And again,
For the way
I
that they
wasn't
view
even
women.
the biggest fan of that movie either. It's just, I don't know.
I feel like a better comparison for this. You've seen Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
I feel like that's a better comparison for this. And I wrote down just this little one-liner that I loved. David Sims from The Atlantic said, Red Sparrow is like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, but only if it were directed by Showgirls era Paul Verhoeven. That's something of a compliment, but it's also a warning. I feel like that's a very accurate
that's a
description of
really
this
good
movie.
yeah.
And that was from a positive review on Rotten Tomatoes. And I feel like that's sort of where I fall into this movie, where I see a lot of the faults that people are talking about, but you can't deny that like there's parts of this that are fun, there's parts of this that are engaging and interesting. I particularly liked the way that this movie, I think a lesser movie would have been like, the Russians are bad, meaning all Russia is bad, and she's going to become an American agent and she's going to turn on Russia. I think the better ending in the way that this movie did end was being a like quadruple triple agent. I can't count at this point. But
I
her,
think it's four times,
her essentially, working with the Americans, but going back to Russia because she doesn't want to destroy Russia. She wants to save Russia. It's her native country. Like she says it at a few points in this movie. Like, I love my country.
Well,
and
I think she truly cares about her mother, who is kind of.
I think that is a bigger motivator.
Help capture, but yeah.
And I think the script maybe doesn't establish as well that she does love her country, but I think that is supposed to be a part of it.
I think there's less
I think you have to
patriotism and more
I think you have to put
survival,
yourself in their shoes. Like, like we may not be out there like waving the American flag, but like when it comes down to it, I mean, we do love America certainly more than another country. Like it would take a whole lot
of Russia, kind of like Russian government, like, which is why I think.
Well, no, I don't think he's a public.
Oh no.
Figure.
But in her mind's eye, when she thinks of the Russian government, she obviously has to identify like.
Well, that's what I think the whole point is that like Russia as a country, as a people, is separate from the way that Russian as a government is acting.
See,
I think that's what the whole.
I don't think that came into like her mindset until Jeremy Irons like revealed his kind of.
No, it was definitely self-preservation before that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they go to great lengths to sort of impress that ideal of like her mother at one point says like they're not going to let you go unless you have something, and then when she meets with Marta, is it just Martha?
I'm not
her roommate, the one who gets killed in the bathtub. She is like, you need to find something. If I were you, I would find something that they need. And I do like lines like that because that better informs sort of the ending of this movie. It doesn't kind of come out of left field when you're like, oh yeah, the entire time she had two people that were, sort of dear to her that told her like, find something that is, find your way out. Like this is, you can't just be stuck in this life forever or they'll never let you go.
Right. I thought the 2 hour and 21 minute runtime was lengthy as fuck.
Many critics did as well.
I think this could have been a really tight script, honestly.
I have to say, because I watched this on Thursday and I saw A Wrinkle in Time on Friday. A Wrinkle in Time has an hour and 49 minute runtime, and A Wrinkle in Time felt much longer.
Well, it's like watching a car accident with
all
of your loved ones
in our review. But I thought maybe it's just because I was enjoying this. Not so much, but I wasn't bored at all during this. Like there was a bunch of twists and turns that were happening, and I felt like it didn't feel like it was dragging at any point. Like there was always something happening that was moving the plot forward, even though there wasn't a whole lot of action in this movie. And it was maybe a little bit long, but like I really can't imagine a version of this movie that's like under 2 hours, really.
Right.
Like I don't really know what do you cut to make this movie that still gets that story across. Where was there excess?
Well, Horse School. I think,
but it is part. Horse School is part of the plot. My problem is more with the execution of Horse School, like particularly like that they have all this time and they waste it on sort of like exploitation of like, here's Jennifer Lawrence's nude scene, here's rape, here's all that, rather than like showing them actually teaching them useful schools, or skills. Like they have them like, oh, like we're learning how to like pick locks and stuff. But like when they try to teach about like seduction, all Charlotte Rampling does. I don't really know why people think she's so great in this movie. I like Charlotte Rampling, but I think she's awful in this movie, and I blame it mostly on the script. But I don't know why she accepted the script to begin with. But like the scenes that she's in where they're trying to teach about seduction, it's mostly like exploitation. That's why like I agree with this review. That's like it feels like it was directed by Showgirls era Paul Verhoeven, where like Showgirls is not an awful movie, but it is very concerned with like where are we going to get the sex in here? Like there's an interesting story under.
No, I've definitely heard it compared to Showgirls.
Yeah,
quite a few
but there's
times,
a whole lot that's just kind of like where do boobs fit in? Where does nudity fit in? Where does a girl on girl sex scene fit in this movie? Like, and that's what this felt like with the Charlotte Rampling scene with the sort of like boyish girl where she's trying to talk about like here's how you seduce someone. But it felt like it was more focused on like this older lady touching this younger woman who looks like a boy, or like the shocking factor of like, oh, we're commanding you to blow job this like fucking like ex-CIA or whatever the dude was that they brought in. That was
the blowjob guy. He only exists backstage to be like, "Hey, girls, we're a blowjob."
I did laugh heavily about that. Like,
cracking up about that.
What does he do when he's not being used for horror school? When there's not someone that has like a boyish haircut in the class, like showtime. Like
that's literally. He was just.
Why do they even need him? What did he do that they haven't just executed him already? But wasn't for being like a pedophile?
He was what? His whole thing was that he was like gay too. Like, why was he? I don't know.
He was an undesirable or whatever they called it. Yeah.
My whole thing with horror school is that I don't think it really ever pays off. I don't think she ever really uses it, and then also, but
they gloss over stuff too, like the fact that like the one scene where they're in front, like I would forgive and understand the horror school scenes more if like the scene where she's in front of the class and she's like stripped naked, and Jennifer Lawrence just doesn't. Even though there's the threat of like, we're going to kill you if you don't do this. They needed to have it more being like, horror school is bad because they're asking you to do these things, but they're also breaking people down. Like they're pushing your boundaries. They're forcing you to do things that you don't want to do rather than like, oh, okay, we'll just get to this at the end of the semester.
Right.
Like there should have been no excuse for her not doing that, what she was asked to do in front of the class. Both times.
The Russians don't look that big and bad. Like she refuses at every stage of this
and
course
also,
where they're like, you know, if you don't follow one little tiny rule, we'll put a fucking bullet in your head because that's how Russia does it. And then Jennifer Lawrence is like, no, and they're like, okay, well, next class, you're really gonna learn. And
well, you're gonna get an F. Yeah. And you're gonna fail horror school.
And then she's like, no. And they're like, okay, well, just this one time, we'll let you off with a warning.
Well, also, like, the way that all the students carry themselves in class, like, even, like, the one, like, the boyish-looking girl who ends up having to interact with, like, the blowjob dude. Like, when she's first there, she's kind of, like, haunched over, and, like, I have a really hard time believing that, like, these are people that are brought in for a spy program. Yeah. Like, I remember, like, my brother who has been applying for, like police squadrons, like, around, like, you know, the country, trying to get a police job, and he's, like, even just, like, at, like, the tests for these application, they treat it like it's the fucking, like, boot camp already, where they're, like, they're yelling at you. Like, if you don't have a pencil, they're like, what the fuck are you even doing here? Like, what is your fucking problem? Like, there's no, like, slouching. There's no, like, oh, here's this, like, half-assed answer as I'm, like, daydreaming in, like, horror school. Like, they treat it like it's at fucking, like, Hogwarts instead of, like, at, like, this Russian... Like, school is not the right word. It's, like, spy boot camp is essentially what it should have been treated like.
You're right.
Especially if we're supposed to believe that over the course of a few months, they train these women to be, like, ultimate seductresses. That's my big problem with the horror school is that, like, we don't have any actual evidence of, like, what does the training look like? How are they actually broken down besides just lectures on, like, if you rub a woman's nipples, that's seduction. Like, that's what the Charlotte Rampling scene was like, if you talk in someone's ear. I didn't feel like, part of it is because it's written by Jason Matthews, who's a CIA operative, not a Red Sparrow, like, graduate. So, like, I didn't feel like they had any insight into, like, how would you actually teach people how to be ultimate seductresses who could do it? And like, I forgive some of it because, again, in the end, the whole movie is not about her being a seductress. She's actually bad at it, and they talk about it in the movie. Like, she tries to seduce Joel Edgerton, and he makes her immediately. And like, that's fine. So like, I can kind of brush that aside. But when you're going to make that the whole marketing push of the movie, that should at least be better. And then we can at least be like, all right, well, she didn't finish whore school. That's why she's so bad. You know?
Yeah.
But I don't understand like how...
I don't even really...
And again, they do try to cover their asses by Charlotte Rampling being like, well, I don't think you're ready to go, but our superiors do. And the one that does pick her is the mole.
Right.
But it's just a lot of stretches, and it feels like an excuse for not having the imagination or the correct information about what does Red Sparrow's school actually look like.
Well, that's what makes me believe like the author of this book, or maybe the screenplay writer, is kind of like that guy who is like later, who's either like Joel Edgerton or like her like boss when she gets to that kind of apartment complex, who are kind of like, oh boy, Red Sparrow, I hear they got magic pussies, like, you know, like, it's just like, that's
I had a big problem with his character too.
That's like that's what that's what the screenwriter feels like, kind of. And it's also, the more I think about it, the more I'm just kind of like, the scene where they're welcoming home the kind of like Russian army, and they're like, all right, go please these guys. I was kind of like, I don't completely understand what this scene means, like in the course of that whole sequence of scenes.
I felt like it was a lot of shock value.
It was just kind of like Jennifer Lawrence has sex with one of these guys, and then also the big...
Well, and just like school is asking you to have sex with people was like the shock value of it.
Right. And then
I had a hard time believing that even if Sparrow School existed, that they would be like using their army for that. Like, I think you want to keep that very secret. And nothing about it really felt totally believable from some of those, like the like field trip things that they were doing.
Yeah, and then the big nudity scene, where, again, this sort of colleague or co-ed that wanted to rape Jennifer Lawrence when she was using a shower. And again, much like the blowjob guy, they bring him back into the picture, which I didn't completely understand, because after this whole kind of sexual assault rape thing happens in the shower, they bring them into a room to talk with the headmistress, and then again, like the head of the
Jeremy
operations.
Irons,
And to show how fucked up Russia is, they go, the one who's really at wrong here is Jennifer Lawrence.
The accused, yeah.
Why would you assault him, kind of? Like, that's really fucked up. You're really on thin ice. Look at him. He looks like shit. But then we cut to class the next day, and she's sitting there in her uniform completely fine, and then they bring him in like they brought in Blowjob Guy, who was a fucking like prisoner of war practically, kind of, and they bring in Blowjob Guy in like prisoner costume or whatever. And I was just kind of like, you can't have it both ways, movie. Like, what did you want, him or her to be the accused? And like, it was very confusing, kind of.
I don't think he was in prisoner. I think he was just in their regular. They have a weird costume that they all wear that's very gray and drab and monotone.
Well,
I think that's what he was wearing. I think he was just wearing his normal stuff when he comes up.
Really?
And also after the rape scene,
I took it as,
I think that they're immediately in the office, and the Jeremy Irons character is there.
Oh, he's definitely there.
But immediately after, that's after there's the rape scene, and then they're in class.
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think it's the opposite. I think it's
No, because Jeremy Irons is brought in after watching, or no, maybe,
yeah, it goes rape scene, all of them in the office, and then after he meets with her in that...
How does the office scene end, though?
The office scene ends with... It's pretty much like accusing her of doing the wrongdoing, and then he meets with her and says, something about how I've seen you perform in ballet, and maybe that's her upper hand of how she's kind of gonna get back into class. And I think he wants to view her further to see how she would react in that kind of classroom scene. And then it shows him behind the scenes watching how she reacts to this kind of like her rapist kind of being brought back toward her. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just felt weird and backwards. I did think he was in some sort of prisoner garb, because I was like, wait, why is he... And
because
maybe
when they meet in the office, they're both in whatever.
Oh, definitely.
And they say,
yes.
I would like to speak with the accused, and he leaves. Meaning she's the one who's in trouble.
Right. But then I just, again...
I think they're... No, but I mean, I know what you're seeing, but I think their outfits they look like prisoner garb just to begin with. Like the women they look like they're factory workers. It's just like a gray, like non-sexual, which is very weird being in like whore school, like Sparrow school.
I don't know. He's brought in like the blowjob guy, which I think presents the visual that why isn't he in class? Why doesn't he just stand up in class, kind of? It was
he was brought in that way. I'm just arguing over the outfit. I think he's in the
definitely.
Stuff.
He's brought in from the back. I don't know. I think he's like it seems like he's like a prisoner of the state now. It appeared to me that way. Anyway, what I really wanted to get in, he comes in and the headmistress says, give him what he wants. And Jennifer Lawrence explicitly does not give him what he wants.
I had a hard time believing this scene from all angles because like...
Exactly. She doesn't give him power, and then she takes the power away, and the headmistress is like, good job. And I was like, what? Because later you're going to say that you explicitly like ignored everything. It was just... This whole fucking sequence of scenes doesn't make sense to me. It's everything... is just
there's a portion of this movie or a facet of this movie that I feel like is almost like detrimental to like men in the way that it views like male sexuality, right? Where like it views a lot of men in this movie as like unsatiable, like just, will take sex at like any way that they can get it. Like in that moment, like I have a hard time buying like I can understand that there's shitty men that will try to rape women in the shower. I can buy that in this movie. I have a hard time buying that, like, if you are like, you can fuck this girl, but you have to do it in front of the class. That even this guy would just be like, okay, I'll try. Like I buy the fact that it doesn't work and he can't get it up, but I have a hard time buying the fact that he's like, yeah, I'll even like attempt that. Like I feel like that's a very small subset of the population that would be like, yeah, okay, let me try to have sex in front of this entire class. Like he's not concerned at all with like the people that are behind him. And maybe that's the underlying theme of him not being able to get it up in that scene is that. But then you also have like they show like her like boss just being like this like total like skis ball like pervert and like it's like I'm arguing like two sides of a coin here where like I don't like the fact that like they portray him as like he's like sweaty all the time. He's always sweaty. He's got his hair like messed up. He never has his tie done. Like it's always like he's just always like just. He reminds me of like the guy from A Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yes.
Is that the name of the? Or is that the second? That's the first book,
Girl
right?
with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yeah. There's like the girl who kicked the. I couldn't remember who was the first one. But her counselor supervisor guy who horribly rapes her in that movie, like he was kind of portrayed in that way as just being like this like I gotta like fucking like pull at my like neck, I'm so horny all the time type thing.
I'm always sweating because of how horny I am.
Yeah, I mean like in that movie that's sort of okay because he is an actual like fucking like disgusting skis ball. I mean this guy is disgusting too, but they're trying to get across this like, oh, all men are sort of like this. It's sort of the idea that this movie ends up getting across when you have like, oh, men are willing to like rape women in the showers, and then you have this guy who's willing to do whatever, and it was just a weird. I feel like a more effective thing would have been to show him as a regular dude who does that, rather than I guess that's why I'm saying I'm arguing two different sides of the same coin. Is like they're showing like like skeevy men do this, but they're trying to also get across that like all men do this. And like I feel like a better way to do that is don't have him be like this sweaty, disgusting person. Like I was almost waiting for a point that like Joel Edgerton did something that was like out of line. And that would have made more like it was like they were trying to accomplish two things at once. And like
it's because desirable men aren't always great and undesirable men aren't always bad. You know, it's kind of like, man, why is the ugly guy always trying to rape me? And the good guy's like a real sweetheart prince.
And I thought they were going towards that when they were talking about Joel Edgerton's like pornography profile or whatever. But then it never comes up again. And like he doesn't act inappropriately around Jennifer Lawrence at all.
Yep.
And like their whole, I mean, we'll get into like their whole like relationship love thing that was
let's
so
talk about
unnecessary.
that, because I mean the whole horse school thing, she never uses really any of the skills from her horse school unless it's this movie's implying that whole quadruple agent could only be pulled off because the chemistry between Joel Edgerton and J. Law was like,
but it's so bad.
Oh, the chemistry is terrible. That's not what I meant to. What I meant to say is that the characters, are they actually in love at all, or is
I've
she
seen
like
synopsis that say that, but I don't.
Or was did she do that all to her advantage? Like it was just kind of like,
well, there's the one
chemistry
scene,
is so bad you can't tell. You can't tell which way is up.
I bought into in the version of my mind that makes me like this movie. They're sort of platonic.
Yes.
He doesn't care. But there's a very damning scene that shows that they were at least trying to make them seem like they were in love.
Yes.
And that's the scene where like she comes back to him to kind of double cross the Russians and become an American agent. And he's like, oh, you know, well, you can sleep in my bed. I'll sleep on the couch. And then she just like comes out in the middle of the night and is like, I think either she says to him or he says to her, like, do you trust me? And then they just start having sex. And it just feels so out of left field because like there hasn't been any chemistry. When she's tried to sort of like flirt with him, he's kind of been like, oh, you're an agent. Like, I know who you are. Like he calls her bluff like immediately.
And I love that part of the movie. I love that she's so bad at being an agent, but then it makes it so fucking kind of the end kind of stupid.
Well, I think the end is believable because they show her doing stuff, and I don't like. I think the whole point is supposed to be that like fucking men is not the only way to be a spy as a woman.
Right.
Like you can be an intelligent person. But then I feel like they undermine that when they have her going to have sex with Joel Edgerton. Like, I've said this before on the podcast. I'm such a fucking fan of platonic relationships in film.
Oh, definitely.
Because I think like film, there's something about the cinematic nature of film that makes us want to shove these like romantic relationships where they're not needed. And like you can have romance in film when it's warranted, but we always try to shove it where it's not needed. And so much better and so more often in film is it better served to have platonic relationships. Like I think of like Homeland, which is a very good like spy drama, at least for the first like 3 seasons of it. The best part of it is that the platonic, completely non-sexual, has nothing to do with romance relationship, just pure like friends loving each other relationship between Claire Danes' character and Inigo Montoya's actors. What's his name? He was also in Criminal Minds. Why can't I remember his name?
I don't know.
It escapes me at this point, but everyone knows what I'm talking about. Inigo Montoya.
Right.
Their relationship in Homeland is like the best part of that show, and there's nothing about it. There's no like will they, won't they type thing. It's just like it's so fascinating to watch a man and woman that are platonic, that care about each other in this completely non-sexual way. Like it's relatable for so much of us, you know, like where I'm just so sick of having like romance and like these people are man and woman, so they have to love each other and they have to have sex like shoved in my face in movies. And there was a part of this movie, I almost like in my positive reception of this movie completely ignore that sex scene, because if you cut that sex scene out, there's so little chemistry in this movie that it feels like a really good platonic relationship.
Yes, it does,
Not even a friendship, just like two kind of patriots who are like trying to do the right thing. Like Jennifer Lawrence is, you know, trying to self-preserve, but you know, Joel Edgerton is trying to do the right thing for his country. There's a portion of this movie where I thought that Joel Edgerton was gay, where I
Yeah.
thought that he had a relationship with the mole, and I thought that was going to be the twist, was because he was so like weird when she would try to come on to him.
Yeah.
Where he was like, okay, like maybe you should go. I think,
Yeah,
at one point.
definitely.
I mean, we later come to find that it's because she's just so bad at being a seductress and a spy.
Yeah. But yeah, let's get into. Do you want to get into Fingers? Or I mean, we could talk more about the ending, I guess, in our Fingers ratings, or if you want to talk about the ending now.
Yeah, we can maybe just walk through the ending and our opinions of it, because it is a big part of the movie.
I mean, we've already kind of talked about what happens at the ending. She's revealed to be this quadruple agent. She sets up her uncle as...
Well, I guess that's a big part we haven't really talked about, is her... I feel like it's really well set up. Like, they do a lot of like little stuff to establish that her uncle's a fucking creep. And like, I think the actor who plays her uncle is fantastic.
Yeah,
he might be the
great.
best actor in this movie. Besides me, I think Jeremy Irons is really good too.
Yeah, I like the uncle.
And I like Joel Edgerton just because I like him. I don't know that this is not his best role.
Right. Yeah.
But the uncle's really great, and they have a lot of good stuff establishing, like, you know, the one scene where her mom's like, you know, like, be careful, like, he used to look at you a little too long, like when you were like younger. You know, and then like they have the scene where she sort of like tries to seduce her uncle for the one little like brief moment. And basically we have the whole thing where Jeremy Irons, when she's in the hospital after there's again, like it kind of like ping pongs back and forth, where like she's going to be a double agent for the Americans and give them the information that she's pretending to give to the Russians about Marta's old mission with Weeds girl. That is the actress from Weeds, right?
Yeah. That's Mary Louise Parker.
Yeah.
Who I really love in this movie.
She's good. She plays the brief moment she's in it. She plays
for
a
what
good,
she does. Yeah, she plays a great
good drunk state agency worker. And then I'm like losing my train of thought. She, at that point, like we know that she's working for the Americans, and then she's sort of like found out by the Russians, by virtue of like clearly like what is it, Boucher? Mary Louise Parker's character has clearly been tipped off in some way when she sees the American agents. She ends up getting killed, and the Russians start to suspect Jennifer Lawrence's character, so they're going to bring her back to Moscow with the files. And I really like the scene in the airport. Again, there's a lot about this script that I think is like really nice, almost like too nice for a movie like this. Like where they really established they've really established physically how far Joel Edgerton is willing to go for his sort of sources. And then he said numerous times, like, I will do anything. If you work for us, I will do anything to make sure that you're safe. And then they have the scene in the airport where she's about to get like walk through like the gate and get taken back to Russia to presumably either be killed or tortured. And he just kind of like stands there. And like we've seen earlier that he, when it was Marble or whatever the mole's name was, he was willing to like fire off like a gun and basically like jeopardize his entire career just to make sure that guy got away. Right. And he has the opportunity. He could have done that in the airport to create a diversion for her to get away, and he doesn't do that. And they kind of like share that look where that's what I thought they were sort of saying to each other, was like, she knows that he's done that before. Like, are you not going to get me out of this? Right. And he just sort of lets her go away back to Russia because she's not important enough to really want for that to happen. And then she gets tortured back in Russia, and she gets tortured so much that they bring in her uncle, and she is able to essentially convince her uncle that like the Americans will believe that like I could work for them now because you've tortured me and I didn't give them anything about them. So I could go back and be a double agent for you guys to the Americans. Right. And at that point, I think we are still a little bit unclear about like, does she want to be an American double agent, or has she been tortured so much that she's she's done a lot in the interest of self-preservation that it could just be, this is the best way for me to survive is to give something to the Russians, from the Americans. So then she goes back to Joel Edgerton, and they have their whole sex scene thing, and then she's in bed, and then someone from the Russians sneaks in and starts torturing Joel Edgerton. And I did like this scene, although a lot of reviews pointed to it as being like exploitative in terms of like it was kind of like gore porn a little bit.
It's a little torture porn,
but they didn't really show. They didn't show a lot of the torture a whole lot. They showed the action.
I kind of didn't like. Honestly, I was about to be like, oh man, like I'm about to be like. There was something that in some sort of movie Facebook group that I'm in was kind of like, man, like at some point in Red Sparrow, you're going to be like shook, kind of. And I was like, I bet this is it. Because the guy who shows up to kind of torture Joel Edgerton is really like, he's really kind of like, you know, it takes hours to like shave like a human's, like all of their skin off down to the bone, kind of. Mm-hmm. And like, that's creepy. Like that's really well performed. And that's like a really like creepy imagery. But then like, he doesn't do that to her roommate. He really just only...
He does. They show the little square on her leg where he's done...
But a square. I thought he was going to, like... He says, like, do you know how long it takes to shave?
I mean, I thought... I sort of got in the scene that, like, it's hyperbole. Like, he doesn't have hours to sit here and actually do that. Like,
but when
you're going to get the point across, and then at a certain point, you're going to kill someone. Like,
I don't know.
Especially with Marta, because Marta didn't have information to give. He was just killing Marta to send a message to...
With Joel Edgerton, I thought that I was kind of like... I don't know. I thought I was gonna like actually like really like this guy's an American.
Well, I think with Joel Edgerton he might have, but with Martha, I don't think there was nothing Martha had to give them. They knew everything. They were only killing Martha. Yeah. Martha didn't do anything wrong. Martha told them.
But I Jennifer Lawrence. That was I don't know. I was just kind of like I bet he's just gonna do like because they were really just doing just like a square on Joel Edgerton's shoulder or whatever, and I was just kind of like. Man, I thought they were gonna fucking like shave all start to like shave a lot of his skin off. Like I thought that would have been a really super creepy skin, but again, they were but they really just did kind of like behind his shoulder, like hidden from the camera.
It was unsettling because he's literally sitting there like flicking around like just like layers of his skin.
I think
it's well acted by Joel Edgerton. It seems very painful.
The buildup is a lot scarier than when it actually starts to happen. But yeah, it was, some of this movie is kind of torture porn.
Anyway, Jennifer Lawrence, in that moment, my whole point was that we don't know whether, because she's playing along with this Russian person who's broke into the apartment to kill and torture Joel Edgerton, and she's kind of like, oh, like, let me do it. And she's actually doing it to him, and she's being like mean to him, and like we and Joel don't know. Has she actually been turned the whole time? And this is her reveal. And then, you know, she actually ends up killing the Russian agent and saving Joel Edgerton. And then she's in the hospital. And Jeremy Irons has his big reveal of like, I'm the mole.
Right.
And, you know, I did like that reveal because, again, I like when they've done enough establishing where like, you don't get it, or at least I didn't get it. I mean, you getting it was a sort of meta aspect of like, well, it's a big actor, so it has to be the twist.
Right.
But the script doesn't give it away.
Right.
Before that, where they did establish like, you know, Joel Edgerton was talking about like, you know, like my mole source, like I would do anything for him, and he was someone who worked very high in the Russian government, but you know, saw what the government was capable of and didn't like what he had done, and you know, wanted to sort of make things right. And that makes sense with what Jeremy Irons' character ends up doing in this movie. He ends up turning, he's the mole. He reveals that to Jennifer Lawrence. And he's essentially like, I'm going to die anyway. The whole reason I turned is sort of this like death wish type thing of like, my wife died because the Russian government would only go to like their sanctioned doctors, wouldn't let me go to an American doctor who could have saved my wife's life. So like, fuck the Russian government. I've got nothing left to live for. I want to take them down. So he's saying like, turn me in as the mole, and that should be enough sort of political clout to get you a promotion pretty high within the Russian, you know, state service or whatever, and then you can replace me as the mole inside, and you can continue working, and we can sort of save this country from the inside by giving it to the Americans in that way.
Right.
So I thought that was a pretty good twist. And then the even bigger twist being that like Jennifer Lawrence, now I'm lost on like, that's after the whole Joel torture scene, which was after the So then how does she get back? Does she just go back to the Russians after that? Or
I believe so, yeah.
I guess they don't really show it. But then she's back at the Russians, and she essentially we find out that she's framed her uncle the entire time, where like the discs that she gave to the Russian government had like no information on them. Like they were sort of like decoy discs. I mean, we knew that already. We had seen the scene of her taking up the lowball glass from Joel Edgerton's apartment after he had given her whiskey, and he used that to plant it at her uncle's apartment. And she had stolen her uncle's apartment, and she had opened up the bank account in his name to all make it seem like he had been the mole. And there was like the weekend that like he was in Vienna for the Joel Edgerton case, but they made it seem like he was there because he was to meet with Joel Edgerton as the mole. And then they do that whole it was kind of like Bridge of Spies, like that like scene of like the two sides like on opposite edges of this like sort of pathway, like highway type thing, and trying to arrange this whole like intricate exchange of like information in the middle of that. And then that's when they're sort of like doing like the flashbacks to like this is how she sort of did the whole thing. It's kind of like a Shawshank Redemption type thing. Like, how did this whole thing come about? Which I still thought was to great effect, because again, they had established that stuff while we were watching it. We just weren't paying attention, and they're kind of connecting the dots for us in that moment.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like it comes out of nowhere. The ending wanted to make me believe that I was watching a better movie than I was actually watching. But I don't think... I think it was just kind of... It felt thrown in there. I mean, especially with the... I mean, maybe there was a better build-up in the book or something, but for the movie, I don't know. It just felt unearned. It felt like it was
But there's so many, like,
in.
there's so many... If that is not the ending, that there's so many things that are thrown out there that don't get tied up, like her seeing her uncle's passport, her taking Joel Edgerton's drink, the scene at the bank, like... I mean, those are all things that have nothing to do with anything else. We're just actually seeing her pulling off her master plan. We just don't know what it is at that point. And,
right, yeah.
You know, like, if that wasn't the ending, then, I mean, those scenes wouldn't be in there. But, like, I mean, they were in there until we knew what the ending was, and they make sense for that ending.
I don't know. I just feel like the movie treats it like she walks off like she's fucking like Kaiser Soze or something.
Like, I mean, it is a big, you know, it's a very, but again, that's why I like the fact that like she had two people very, or at least one person important to her and one person that she respected the opinion of, telling her like, find something, like always be looking for essentially your way out, because they're never going to let you go. They're just going to use you until they can discard you. Essentially, you know, so that's why she's doing things like, oh, her uncle's passport's out. You know, she might not have even known that she was going to frame it at that point, but she's like, all right, let me take this. Or she, you know, she finds Joel Edgerton's drink and she's like, this could be useful at some point. I could plant this somewhere. And I mean, obviously she knows by the time she creates the bank account in whoever's name, the uncle's name. Anyway, I don't know. It's not like the greatest ending of all time. There's nothing about this movie that's like super great, but there's not a whole lot that I have a real problem with, aside from like the horror school thing and Jennifer Lawrence's accent. Like, I had a whole lot of fun watching this. I was engaged the entire time. I was surprised by the twists and entertained by them in that way. I think it made me realize that I do favor like spy dramas a lot. Like, I liked Atomic Blonde for the action. I feel like it was maybe not as true to like spy dramas in that way, but like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which just reminded me of a certain deal. It's clearly not as great as that movie. That's like a five-finger movie, in my opinion. But just like the tone of it was great, and I liked the idea of a spy drama that wasn't like, oh, Americans are the end-all be-all, and she's going to be the main character because she's going to turn to the Americans. Like, I like the fact that she went back to the Russians. And this idea of like, you know, not every single Russian citizen is someone who's like, you know, helping Donald Trump win the election. Like, they're not all shady people. It's a country run by a shady government. And wouldn't it be nice to see Russia given back to the people and taken away from this sort of shady government? And maybe there are people in Russia who feel that way too. Right.
Yeah.
I guess that's sort of my final thoughts and one little rant there. We should probably get into our ratings now too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of sort of my final thoughts right there. So I'll just throw it out there. I'm going to give it a 3. I think it's slightly above average. There's not a whole lot that I can like super praise about this movie, but I can't really criticize that much either. I had fun watching it, and maybe that's a product of it being early in the year, and I don't have a whole lot to compare it to, 2018 wise. But I feel like if I gave Atomic Blonde a 3, which I think I did, I have to give this a 3.
Right.
I think Atomic Blonde was good for different reasons. I think the style was better in Atomic Blonde and the substance wasn't really there. Whereas I think some of the substance was there. Maybe not so much in the characters, but in the plot. I thought this was a better plot, in my opinion.
No, I agree.
So I'll give this 3.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have... Yeah, I've laid a lot out on the table. Let me see if there's any notes I kind of skipped over. I like the movie, but the movie's premise definitely wasn't fully realized. It was definitely a slow burn. I mean, again, I wasn't a fan of the running time. I didn't think the movie had the greatest pacing, really, but it was definitely a slow burn. It was brutal as hell. Definitely torture scenes I've never seen before, including that one with Joel Edgerton. Again, I think there is something new to spies being taught how to use their bodies as like tools of the state and like effectively getting whored out. I don't know. It was cool to see like an adult thriller that could be like a little more extreme at times. But I think that's again, this has been a lengthy review. I've definitely said everything I need to say. I think I'm also going to land at a 3 for this film.
That'll make my job real easy. 3 fingers.
What's the average, Mike? What's the damage?
3 fingers.
That's fair. It's fair for this movie.
It would be unfair if we gave it something else, since we both gave it a 3.
Yes.
So I think that's about it. I don't know that I would... There was also another review that I read that was like, it's a silly, fun spy thriller, something to that effect, that I don't know that I can recommend to anyone. And I think I would sort of agree. Because like it's not like a... He says it's fun, but it's not really like a fun movie. Like I wasn't like, like
having fun.
But there's a little bit of it like that does sort of play into that sort of exploitation through the violence, a little bit of it through the sex. That's just kind of like, there's parts of it that are like titillating in the way that like a horror movie is titillating, and like, you know, a horror movie may not have the best character progression or plot arc, but you're still invested because of like the immediate dire situations that the characters are in and some of the new inventive, you know, predicaments that they put these characters in horror movies. And this is sort of similar in that way. There's a little bit more of the drama side, I think, on this, without maybe the character progression in this. But I don't know who I would really, like, I can't think of anyone that I would be like, oh yeah, you would really like Red Sparrow, you know? Like, it doesn't seem like something that's really up Jennifer Lawrence's fan base's alley. It's also not, it's like in between, like, it's in between like that and like, you know, I couldn't recommend this really to someone who liked Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy either confidently. Like, even though I like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and I ended up sort of liking this, like it's just, I think I'm more just defending it because I didn't hate it, and there's not a whole lot that I think it was sort of unfairly torn down because of some narratives in the press. I think like I didn't read it yet, but the Rotten Tomatoes score was 48%. And I think that's a little. I think it should be at least like a 60, maybe.
I haven't looked
like
at
a
any
65,
of the
like
Rotten Tomato scores for any of these films that we've been reviewing this week. So that kind of does come as a surprise. I kind of thought it would be
the average rating was
little higher,
5.5 out of 10. That seems a little low. The website's critical consensus
almost right below us.
The Red Sparrow aims for smart, sexy spy thriller territory, but Jennifer Lawrence's committed performance isn't enough to compensate for thin characters and a convoluted story. So I don't actually agree with that consensus. Like, I don't think Jennifer Lawrence's performance is that good or committed. I think the movie succeeds in spite of Jennifer Lawrence's performance.
Right.
And I don't think the story is that convoluted. Like, I think that's what I liked about it, is that like in Atomic Blonde, they did sort of the same thing of like,
I'm a spy for a spy for a spy for a spy.
In this, they did that, but I thought that it was so well established and paced it during the reveals of all that enough where it wasn't like, like it was established through the character and through like things that we saw her doing, where like when that reveal happened, we were like, oh, okay. Like it wasn't like something that the audience just wasn't privy to. We just didn't, know to look for that stuff at the time. And B, it wasn't like bring. Like it was paced out enough that you were like twist. And like it wasn't like you didn't have like whiplash from like all the twists in this movie. It just kind of,
right.
You're like, okay, that's a cool ending to this movie, I thought.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that about wraps up our Red Sparrow review. Went probably a little longer than we wanted to. Didn't realize we had that much to talk about with Red Sparrow. But if you disagree, leave a comment below on SoundCloud, YouTube, or hit us up on Twitter or Facebook, wherever you're finding us, interacting with us. We'd love to continue the conversation. Or even better, join our Facebook group. Search How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up, the Facebook group on Facebook, obviously. And, start a conversation with us about Red Sparrow there. We'd love to talk to you there. And pretty much all our other links can be found at howmanyfingerspodcast.com. This is the benefit of Joe doing his little intro things, is I don't have to run through every single link that we have at the end of these episodes. So we're going to go record a few more. Tune in next week for Game Night. And then the week after that for Disney Oprah's A Wrinkle in Time. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.